Welcome back to the round of 8 in the UCID and UNSW StarSoc tournament. My name is Crucius and this is Xelnaga Caverns, as you can obviously see. In the bottom left we have our purple Zerg, OneHand, and on the other hand, in the top right position, we have our blue Terran, Brockemon. Now Brockemon is probably a Digimon. Some also call him a Pokemon. Whichever you choose is completely up to you. But regardless of that fact, Brockemon has been pretty dominant in the tournament so far. So the question on everyone's mind is OneHand going to be able to topple Brockemon, or will Brockemon walk away with yet another win? We will just have to wait and see. This is a best of 5, so, and this being game 1, the results are pretty unclear at the moment. So depending on what happens in game 1 and game 2, obviously game 3, game 4, game 5, if we get to them, we'll just have to see what happens. Now, OneHand is sending his Overlord into Brockemon's base, fairly standard as Zerg. He may choose to sack that Overlord from the start, or he may just choose to leave it at the cliff, just in range to see the wall off. Now, Brockemon is walling off with his standard 2 supply depot and barracks. At the moment there is nothing from OneHand, but he is sending his drone out, so that's probably either going to be scouting or that's going to be placing a hatchery. And we do see it is actually getting positioned for a hatchery, so he is going for a fast expand, and he is also sending his drone out to scout. Now we see Brockemon also getting his refinery up, so probably looking to tech up in comparison to OneHand, who is actually looking to play a macro game. Now, Xelnaga Cavern does have a relatively short walking distance, so early aggression will actually be quite effective, especially if your opponent chooses to go for a fast expand. So we'll just have to see if Brockemon does choose to take advantage of OneHand's situation at the moment. He is sending his SCV down, so he is going to be able to scout that fast expand. OneHand only just putting down his spawning pool, so he won't actually have any defense for a while. Now OneHand is choosing to throw up an extractor, keeping that drone alive, since he does have his first marine out, but he is going to start chipping away at the extractor. But Zerg being as adaptive as they are, OneHand probably is going to be cancelling that extractor, throwing back another one, keeping that drone alive, just so he can get some scouting information later on. Now OneHand is also throwing up his extractor in his own base, so he is probably going to be getting some early speedlings, or he could go straight for lair tech. We'll just have to see which one he chooses to go for. OneHand's expo does finish up, so he is going to be at a slight economic lead against the Terran, but Brockemon is going for his factory, so we probably are going to be seeing Brockemon's, I wouldn't call it a preferred strategy, but he does tend to like it quite a bit against the Zerg, and it looks like OneHand is going to be losing that drone, getting sniped off by the 3 Marines. So Brockemon probably looking to go for fast Hellions, and probably looking to get that pre-infernal igniter. Name has escaped me for a second, I don't know why. But yeah, he probably is looking to get Blue Flame Hellions pretty quickly, and he is throwing on a Tech Lab, so he probably is going to be going for the fast Hellions. Either that, or he is going to be going for some Siege Tech to turtle up and probably look to get his natural as well. Now, OneHand does have a couple of Zerglings out, just going to use them to poke around, see what information he can gather. And at the moment he isn't going to see much, he is just going to be seeing a barracks with a Tech Lab on it, with a reactor on it, sorry. Completely dropping the ball again. But he is going to be pushed away from that wall in, and it looks like Brockemon is going for the fast Hellions. And if we look at his Tech Lab, probably looking to get the blue flames as well, which he is. And at the moment we don't really have much from the Zerg. He is trying to get his first expansion saturated. He is getting Zergling speed, and the Zergling speed will help keep the Zerglings alive, especially against the blue flame Hellions, but it's not going to do all that much. It is going to help when he does have a significant amount of Zerglings, but at the moment that isn't really happening. He is producing 10 Zerglings. He does have a Spine Crawler up, producing another one as well, which is going to help drive away the Hellions if they do choose to be a bit aggressive. Now, the Terran is going for his Expo as well, so if we look at the income tab at the moment, Zerg is sitting around 1000 minerals per minute, whereas the Terran is sitting around 800 or so. But with the mules coming in, the Terran will be able to balance out, and once he does get his expansion up, he is going to start pulling ahead very, very slowly. The harvesting count is relatively even at the moment, 28 to 31 drones, but with the mules, again, that differential is going to be compensated for pretty easily. Now we do see Brockemon just keeping his Hellions at the Xel'Naga Tower. That's going to give him some vision, just in case the Zerg actually does decide to be a bit aggressive and tries to do a quick run by. The Zerg is getting his lair tech up, also getting his second extractor, so we're probably going to be seeing some lair tech come out pretty quickly. The Terran is getting yet another factory, so we're going to be probably seeing a predominantly mech play at the moment. Now the Hellions are getting into position, the Marines are going to be backing them up, so we probably are going to be seeing some aggression coming from the Terran. So we have to see whether or not Terran choose to go for some tech damage or economic damage. Tech damage is basically when they're going to be trying to delay Zerg's tech as much as possible, either by destroying tech buildings or just basically wiping out Zerg's units. Economic damage will basically either going for the hatch or drones, but at the moment he does seem to be actually just clearing the way, just so we can basically have free reign over the Zerg's base as much as he possibly can. We also do see a tech lab come down on the second factory, so we are going to be seeing predominantly mech play. Probably going to go for a couple of siege tanks and a third factory coming up, as well as an engineering bay. So it is definitely going to be some mech play as opposed to bio, which actually Brockemon does tend to favor quite a bit rather than going the bio ball, which can get taken out by Bailings pretty easily. He does choose to go for the mech. It's a lot more hardy, but you do trade off the mobility in exchange for that. Now Brockemon is sending one Hellion out. That's probably just going to be doing some extra scouting, or it's going to join up at Xel'Naga Tower. Now Zerg is throwing down his Evo chamber, looking to get a couple of upgrades up pretty quickly. He is getting yet another Spine Crawler to replace the one that was sniped off earlier. He is also getting his Roach Warden out. So OneHand probably looking to get Speed Roaches out. So that is going to help deal with the mech army pretty easily, because Zerglings do tend to get picked off by siege tanks pretty easily. Now the Zerg is getting his Bailing Nest up. That is going to help deal with the remainder of those Marines, and he is also getting the +1 missile attacks. Now Brockemon is continuing to build a couple more Hellions. That is just going to help complement his current army quite a bit. Also continuing to get those Marines. He does have 2 command centers up at the moment, so that mule advantage is going to be coming in handy probably right about now. Now the Zerg is getting Burrow, Bailing Speed, and Roach Speed, so he is going to be going for predominantly Roaches. He is also getting his second hatch up somewhere. Looking. Ah, so it is going to be an in-base hatch because he doesn't really have the units to defend his third. Now the Zerg is being a bit aggressive, going through the back alleyway, but he does decide to pull back and return to base. Now if he does get caught off guard by these Hellions, it could actually do quite a lot of damage to the mineral line, but he did have a Zergling placed at the Xel'Naga Tower, so he is going to know when to fall back at just the right time. Now I do see Brockemon just chilling outside the Zerg's base, trying to look for a couple of things to be able to poke, to pick off, but the Roaches are going to be pushing him back pretty easily. So we take a look at the income tab. Terran is sitting at 1,500 minerals per minute at the moment, whereas Zerg is sitting on 1,300. Now the harvest counts are equal, only just differing by 1 at the moment, so the Terran is going to be pulling away pretty quickly. So the Hellions are looking to go through the back alleyway, trying to get into the mineral line pretty quickly, but we'll just have to see how quickly Zerg is able to respond. He does have a creep tumor and his queen placed there, so the queen could be in quite a bit of danger, but it is on creep, so we'll be able to get away pretty easily. Now the drones do take a couple of hits, the Zerglings and Roaches do come in, and these Hellions are probably going to get sniped off pretty easily. They do get blocked in by the Zerglings and the drones, and that will be the end of that harassment. Now the Terran is going for an armory, so we're going to be seeing some Thors come up pretty soon. He is also getting a 4th factory, still only producing off the 1 barracks as well. And the Terran is finally getting his 3rd base up, so he is going to be pulling ahead even further in the economy. Zerg doesn't really have its 3rd base up yet, which it really needs to get up pretty soon, or else it's going to be falling terribly behind in the economy. Now the Terran is looking to break down the second rocks just to get his third up, but that is going to take a while with all the Hellions. But a couple of siege tanks do come in, and that's going to basically get crumbled. Now we do see a fifth factory coming up for the Terran, so this is going to allow him to reinforce his army very, very quickly. And he is throwing up a couple missile turrets in anticipation for Mutalisk, so that kind of does show that he is basically committing everything into this mech army. He doesn't really want to have Mutalisk running inside his base, because Terran mech army is really, really immobile. You won't be able to fall back to your base quick enough to help defend. Now the Zerg does actually burrow his roaches. He is going to try to sneak up on the Zerg, snipe off what he can and burrow back down and escape. But the Terran is anticipating this. He is throwing down some missile turrets, so he is going to be able to see those roaches if they do manage to finish. One does come up, so the roaches do take a couple of extra hits than they were meant to at the start. The Zerg really should burrow these roaches back down, but he does lose all those roaches. The Banelings come in, try to do as much damage as possible, but Brockemon does respond quick enough and pulls those Marines back. Now that Zerg attack didn't really do as much as it should have. He did sacrifice quite a lot of roaches, but only managed to snipe off a couple of siege tanks. So Zerg is actually falling pretty far behind at the moment. He is getting missile attack too. He is getting a lot more roaches, so he is pretty committed to this tech at the moment. Whereas the Terran is going for a couple of Thors, he is getting vehicle weapon upgrades, he is getting a couple more Hellions, and finally getting his second barracks up. So he's going to be adding a couple more infantry units to help complement his army a bit. Now Zerg is finally getting his third up. It is actually pretty late, because if we look at the income tab, the Terran is above 2,000 minerals per minute, just slightly dipping under, but the Terran does spot it, so he is probably going to be trying to run in and delay that as much as possible. But OneHand is moving his roaches into position to defend that natural. Zerg is currently sitting at 1,200 minerals per minute, and if you look at the worker count, it is really, really sparse, I guess the word would be. 69 harvesters for the Terran, 44 for the Zerg, so the Zerg is actually falling behind very, very quickly. And as we know, a Terran who is very far ahead in economy is going to be really, really hard to defend against. Now the Hellions are slightly out of position, so OneHand is going to try to move in with his roaches, but the Hellions are going to be escaping in time. And if I was OneHand, I'd be trying to snipe out those missile turrets, or else the burrow would be basically rendered useless. As OneHand is just trying to poke in and out, trying to snipe off what he can. Brockemon's units are actually slightly out of position. He could spread these siege tanks out a bit better, try to get as much coverage as possible. Terran is getting yet another refinery up, and he does see the roaches are out of position, so he's going to move his Blue Flame Hellions in to try to take out that third. But they don't really do all that much damage to buildings, so that is actually going to take quite a bit of time to bring down. Now, we do see Terran constantly producing out of these factories. It's mainly Thors and siege tanks at the moment, and we do see the Terran actually does have a substantial amount of siege tanks. He is getting vehicle weapons level 2, whereas the Zerg is getting his level 1 carapace at the moment, and also getting another queen to help saturate his third. Now we do see an attack from the Zerg. He is going to get repelled pretty easily, especially with all these siege tanks and all these Thors, but he does burrow away to try to get away. But there is a missile turret placed here, so the Terran could actually siege up his siege tanks and basically try to snipe off all those roaches if they do try to escape. So at the moment, the Zerg is actually kind of trapped. He could try to go back through the back alleyway, but at the moment he is pretty committed to this attack. He is going to move into the Terran's base, try to do as much damage as possible. We do see the Terran army trying to move back, but being a mech army, it is pretty immobile. It's going to take him a while to get back, and especially with his building placement the way it is, his movement is going to be hampered quite a bit. He is lifting off his buildings to minimize the damage to his tech, but Zerg is going to be repelled after all. Now this planetary fortress at the gold is actually going to help defend even when his units are out of position. It's not going to hold for long, but it is going to hold enough. And we do see the roaches trying to push in. knowing that the units are out of position. This is actually a pretty good move by the Zerg. While his units are in his base defending, he does push in to try to take out this 4th, and when the units come down to defend, he does attack the main again. But the Terran did actually see this coming. He does split up his army, keeping half of it in the base, bring half down to the expansion to defend, and both pushes are going to get repelled. So far Brockemon is actually demonstrating the strength that he has been showing throughout the entire tournament so far. He's showing that he can micromanage really well. He knows that his macro, his build orders are pretty solid, especially against the specific race that he is playing. OneHand is actually in quite a bit of trouble right now, because if we look at the income tab yet again, the differential has eased a bit, with the Zerg pulling ahead in the worker count, 72 drones to 64 SCVs. The Mule is not really able to compensate for much. The Terran does throw a scan to try to snipe off the burrowed roaches, but they do get away in time. We do see the Terran actually going for yet another expansion. This would be expansion number 4, if my maths doesn't fail me. Yes, it is expansion number 4. But the Terran does push into the Zerg's main. He does siege up his siege tanks, so this hatch will probably fall. He does have quite a lot of roaches, but not really enough to deal with this many siege tanks. He could try to burrow, try to force a scan out of the Terran, but with 4 command centers up, no, 3 command centers up, the Terran can actually afford to expend a couple of scans. Now the Terran does move out after sniping off this expansion. He doesn't really want to be caught off guard, as again, Terran mech army is pretty slow, and we do see Zerg is moving in because he knows the Terran is out of position. The planetary fortress is doing actually a lot of damage. The siege tanks taking out most of the roaches, and these siege tanks are going to come in to reinforce, and that roach army is going to basically be repelled. And we do see Brockemon saturating his 4th. At the moment the Terran is still only sitting on 2 bases. He is probably mined out at his main, which he is. The natural is almost mined out as well. So at the moment the Zerg is running really low on income. At the moment the Zerg is on 700 versus the Terran's 1500. The harvester count has dipped back into the favour of the Terran, 63 harvesters to 53 for the Zerg. Now if you look at the production tab again, more roaches coming out. The Zerg is finally getting his hive tech up. Terran is going for yet another expansion somewhere, and there it is. So he's probably going to try to float that off to either this back base, or if he wants to be a bit offensive and a bit risky, he could go for this base, but he is probably trying to go for the safe route, go for that expansion. And at the moment we do see a couple of Vikings out. They could go around and overlord hunt a bit, but at the moment Zerg is in a slight contained by the Terran, and by slight I mean quite a big contain. He is going to have quite a bit of trouble getting out of this. He would be able to get out of this if he did have some mutas on the field, but even then the Thors would be dealing quite a lot of damage. OneHand does GG out of game 1, and OneHand did play pretty well in that game, but Brockemon just happened to slightly outplay the Zerg this time around. But again, this is a best of 5, so OneHand does have a chance to come back, and we'll just have to see if he manages to take out a couple of games. So this has been Crucius for UCID and New South Wales StarSoc, as well as IntoStarCraft, and I'll be back with Game 2.